what we are doing here, we are focusing on two texts of the book of Revelation that are closely related, and the book of Revelation clearly points to that. This is something really that we do not to guess or to suppose, because the book of Revelation clearly suggests and indicates the relationships between the two texts. So the first one is Revelation 12:17. Any reader of the book of Revelation will notice that this text actually concludes the introductory chapter and scene of the book of Revelation that ushers the readers into descriptions of the final events, or the so-called the eschatological section of the book of Revelation. So chapter 12 begins with a description of a pregnant woman. The woman in the Bible is a symbol of God's people, of the church, and this woman is about to give a birth to the Messiah. The next scene portrays the dragon, which is clearly identified in the chapter as the serpent of old, the devil, the Satan himself. Then the next scene describes the war in heaven, after which Satan is cast out from heaven down to the earth, followed by the description of an angry Satan who, having been cast out from heaven, he is now persecuting the woman that had given the birth of the child. So when we see the whole chapters, we see Satan always as a defeated enemy. There's something that fills him with displeasure, with great anger, and this is what brings us to verse 17. So this is clearly the eschatological text. It's telling us how Satan becomes angry with the woman that gave birth to the child. But he decides to prepare himself for that final war against the remnant of the woman's offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and they have the testimony of Jesus. So evidently those who will be the subject, of that great war that Satan will be waged against, they have two characteristics. They keep the commandments of God, and the second characteristic is the testimony of Jesus. And now we are coming to the points, because the Bible commentators are divided on the meaning of this second one. That's what is the testimony of Jesus. And when we read in English language or any other languages, evidently everything looks clear until we go to the grammar in Greek. And in Greek grammar, the two possibilities of the meaning of the testimony of Jesus. We call it subjective and objective genitive. Subjective genitive refers to the word subject. Subject is always an individual or the person who does something. So if this is the testimony of Jesus, it will really point to Jesus as the subject of the testimony. It means that Jesus gives the testimony. But the objective genitive points to the person who is in that genitive as the object of the action. So it means Jesus would be the object of the testimony. So let me simplify it. Is it the testimony that Jesus bears? Or is it the testimony that the Christians, that the believers, they bear about Jesus? And the scholars are divided. However, in my presentation that I made, I am providing for some people a little bit complicated grammatical analysis that is based actually on three very clear arguments showing that it is really the text, the phrase that points to Jesus as the subject of the action. It's the testimony that Jesus gives and that Jesus provides. It's based, as I mentioned, on three arguments. One argument is, whenever we have in Greek, and the same is expressed, for instance, in English translation or any other translation, is if this is the testimony that believers bear about Jesus, then it must be the testimony about Jesus. In Greek, it's the word peri, okay? It expresses. However, when you have Jesus as the subject, not as the object, when Jesus is the subject, then you need it. It's exactly as it is expressed in this text. The testimony of Jesus. It means the testimony that Jesus gives, that he presents. Okay. The second very clear argument here really deals with Bible translations. And it's telling us how much is important to look into the original languages. In original language does not say the testimony, okay, that the believers hold about Jesus. Okay? It talks about the testimony that the believers hold, the testimony they hold about Jesus. So it's telling us that the end time remnant, okay, that is the object of Satan's attack, they are characterized by possession of the testimony of Jesus. This is the second argument. So they are in possession of the testimony. Now comes to the next question. Then, what is really the testimony of Jesus? The testimony that Jesus gives. There is another text, as we mentioned at the very beginning, that really defines and provides the explanations of the meaning of the testimony of Jesus, and that's Revelation 19:10. These two texts are related. Actually, in the text we see John. Okay, he hears everything from the interpreting angel, telling him about and explaining the things that John saw in the vision. And John, now overwhelmed with everything that he saw, that he heard, he falls down before the feet of the angel to worship him. And angel tells him, don't do it. I'm simply a servant of God, in the same way as you are your brethren, okay? There is only one to worship, okay? And that's God, because I'm a servant like your brothers who are in the possession of the testimony of Jesus. But the angel immediately provides the clarification that is very important for our consideration at this moment, telling us, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. That's why these two texts are closely related, and they're very important that they're studied together, because this second text provides the explanation on the meaning of that phrase that is found in the previous text, telling us what actually is meant with that the end-time believers are in possession of the testimony of Jesus, what actually the testimony of Jesus is all about. When John heard from the angel that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, he did not have any difficulty to understand, and even John did not have any need to explain the meaning of the spirit of prophecy, because the sources from the first century, Jewish sources, indicate clearly that the phrase the spirit of prophecy was known and well known among the Jewish people. Even in the synagogue, very often it was used, always to mean the Holy Spirit, okay, who speaks to the people through special individuals who are called into the prophetic ministry. That's why it's called the spirit of prophecy. And we have so many evidences, and I would like to invite viewers to look into my articles, because I'm providing, good examples of those sources. when the Holy Spirit comes upon the prophet, among the Jewish people, always it meant, okay, the Holy Spirit using the prophet to speak to the people, therefrom comes the expression, the spirit of prophecy. There is something very important that we have to observe. Going back to chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, that verse 17 points to that final war that Satan will launch, okay, against God's people. So it's very the end time. It's telling us that those people against whom Satan will launch that final war, okay, are characterized by the possession of the gift of prophecy. So you're talking about God's end time people is. So the question is, how is this text related to Ellen White? Okay. As the first thing I would like to point is, this is not a prophecy about Ellen White. Why? For the simple reason, because the book of Revelation never talks about certain individuals. It's always the systems or God's people or a group of people who are in general. So this text is really point that at the time of the end, God's people who will go through peculiar time, like no generation before, they will be provided with special guidance by God during those times, guidance through the prophetic gift. So this is general. They will be in the possession of that prophetic gift. However, Seventh-day Adventists have experienced the presence of that prophetic voice and God's gift given to them in the person and teaching and the writings of Ellen White. That's why this text is for us very, very important, because we believe that prophecy of Revelation 12:17 was fulfilled in the person of Ellen White, and we believe what she wrote actually was in the fulfillment of that prophecy of Revelation 12:17. Her writings was God's voice of encouragement, counsel, and guidance of God's people who are to go through those peculiar times.